Welcome to Mickey, Marvel, and More, Disney news, commentary, and opinion. From theme parks to Thanos and from Skywalker to Skyliner, my family and I will discuss it all. So let's go!
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.
Hello, Mark here, and welcome to another episode of Mickey, Marvel, and More. Thanks so much for joining us today. If you're a longtime listener, thanks for sticking with us. If you're a new listener, welcome to the Mickey, Marvel, and More family. Either way, we are glad to have you with us. Loyal support from our fans like you guys is what keeps us going. And it was a loyal fan who wrote in and suggested this episode's family chat idea. A few episodes back, we read some listener mail from Guybrush Threepwood. Guybrush asked us if we would do a breakdown of all the Marvel and Star Wars animated content on Disney Plus and tell you guys which ones are worth your time or important to their respective overall storylines, and that's just what we are going to do this episode. Fan favorite Zack and I will sit down around the virtual table and give you guys the lowdown on all of Disney's Marvel and Star Wars animated content. So we've got a lot to cover, so let's get right to it, starting off with some news from in and around the Disneyverse.
Ugh, he's doing his own theme music? Big, dumb, and tone deaf. I am so glad I was unconscious for all of this.
Mission accomplished.
First up, we have probably the craziest crime-related story out of Walt Disney World since our coverage of the Menu Hacker. On September 15th, 2025, the Paddlefish restaurant located in the Disney Springs shopping district was burglarized. Now, the Paddlefish restaurant looks like a steamboat, and it sits right on the edge of the water. And right after midnight on September 15th, it was burglarized. And I'm sure you're like, okay, it was burglarized. Burglaries don't happen all that often in Walt Disney World, I'll give you that. But what's so crazy about it, Mark? Well, thanks for asking. Here's the crazy part. The burglar was a man wearing scuba gear, a wetsuit, and goggles, and he swam underwater across the body of water in front of Disney Springs Shopping District. That body of water is called Lake Buena Vista. Then he boarded the boat, found a place to store his wetsuit and scuba gear before spray painting the security camera with black spray paint. Once he accomplished that, he found his way to the manager's office. There were 2 employees inside the manager's office counting cash from that day and putting it in the safe. The man then forced the employees, without brandishing a weapon, mind you, to go to the corner of the room and close their eyes. He then tied up the 2 employees and stole between $10,000 and $20,000. He then left the office, put all of his scuba gear back on, dove back into the water, and disappeared into the night across Lake Buena Vista. Let this craziness sit with you for just a second. This crime sounds like it's right out of a Mission Impossible movie. I guess the best part of the story is that the employees were not harmed in any way, and as I said before, the man apparently had no weapons. At the time of the recording of this episode, no more information was available, and the Paddlefish Burglar apparently has still not been identified or found. Mickey, Marvel, and More will keep you posted about this ridiculous, crazy story.
Are you Tony Stank?
Yes, this is Tony Stank. You're in the right place.
Next up is a super cool story that is sure to make fans of comic books, specifically everything under the Disney umbrella, super happy. The Walt Disney Company and WebToon Entertainment are expanding their partnership to create a new digital comics platform that will unite Disney's vast catalog of stories with WebToon's own original digital comics. For the first time, fans will be able to access more than 35,000 digital comics across all of Disney's brands. This library will include decades of Marvel, Star Wars, Pixar, Disney, and 20th Century Studios comics. The platform is based upon Disney's current digital comics platform called Marvel Unlimited. This new service will expand it to a broader offering that includes archived runs, current titles, and original stories. The new service will be built and operated by WebToon Entertainment and offer both vertical scroll and traditional reading formats of the material. And the best news is you may already have access to some of this material. If you're a current Disney Plus subscriber, which I'm quite sure all of the listeners to this show already are, as part of your Disney Plus Perks program, you'll receive access to a curated selection of titles at no additional cost. So it sounds like if you're a Disney Plus subscriber, you won't get access to everything, but at least you'll get access to some of the material and decide if you want to become a full-time subscriber. Many people I know are graphic novel comic book purists and probably only want to read the paper versions. But if you're a casual reader like I am, this may be just the thing for you. Be sure to check out the link in the show notes for all of the information.
In a special press conference held recently at Walt Disney World, Disney Chairman Michael Eisner unveiled plans for the biggest and most ambitious theme park in Disney history.
I'm here to announce that we're going to present a wild animal kingdom on 500 acres just west of our north-south road.
Finally, here at Mickey, Marvel, and More, we have always promised to bring you all of the animal news, big and tiny, out of the Disney universe. But sometimes this news can be a little sad. This is one of those times. Gino the Silverback Gorilla, the most senior gorilla in all of Disney's Animal Kingdom troupe, has passed away. He was 44 years old. He would have turned 45 this December. Gino, a Western lowland gorilla, was a day oneer in Animal Kingdom. Gino has been there since the opening day of Animal Kingdom in Disney World on April 22nd, 1998, and has been with us on the Gorilla Falls Exploration Trail ever since. Joe Rohde, a former Imagineer and the architect of Disney's Animal Kingdom, had this to say about Gino. Quote, Gino was a true alpha male. He was a powerful, gentle, humorous, and patient partner to all of his minders, end quote. Gino has been at Animal Kingdom for over 30 years. My family and I have seen him many times over the years. I'll post some pictures in the show notes that I took of old Gino back in 2009. As I was preparing for this story and reading a little bit more about Gino, I discovered that he is leaving behind an incredible legacy. Gino was the father to 14 offspring, and because of this, his contributions to global gorilla care and conservation will live on forever. Thank you so much, Gino. You were the goodest boy. As always, Mickey, Marvel, and More will always bring you the latest big and tiny Disney animal news. Stay tuned.
Who's the youngling?
I'm Master Skywalker's Padawan. The name's Ahsoka Tano.
So I thought you said you'd never have a Padawan.
There's been a mix-up. The youngling isn't with me.
Stop calling me that. You're stuck with me, Sky Guy.
Today's family chat was inspired by a request from one of our listeners. The listener had written in and suggested that we put together a chat based on all of the Marvel and Star Wars animated shows on Disney+. The listener thought it was all very confusing and wasn't sure what was important, what's not, what's canon for Star Wars, what's part of the sacred timeline for Marvel. Quite frankly, they wanted to know what things were really just worth their time, and we thought that sounded like a great idea. And as a loyal listener to the show, you well know if we're going to talk about Star Wars and Marvel, that can mean only one thing. We are going to bring in fan favorite Zack. Today, we don't have to reach out to our Echo Base studios in a secret bunker in Chicago, because today we are lucky enough to have Zack right here with us at the Yavin Base home studio. Welcome home, Zack.
Excited to be here and excited to talk about some animated content.
All right, we've got a lot of things to cover, so I think we really need to get right to it. And so we're going to start off with the Marvel animated shows. And concerning Marvel, Basically, the important thing to note is whether it is part of the sacred timeline or not. You want to explain what that means?
So for Marvel, their idea of canonicity is a little more vague because with the advent of the multiverse saga, they treated it as, well, everything is canon, but only so many things are part of the sacred timeline.
Right.
So the sacred timeline is all of the events that we see in most of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think with the exception of Deadpool and Wolverine, everything else has been a part of the sacred timeline.
So with all of these shows, we're going to address, a little bit about what they are. We're not going to give full reviews, just let you know what it is, what we think about it, and whether it's part of the timeline or not. All right, so we're going to start off with the first little show here. It is the What If series. I say little. It's actually a really fun, really fun program. What is What If?
So What If was the MCU's first animated series.
I didn't realize it was the first one.
Not Marvel's first animated series, but for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it was their first series.
Yeah, Marvel stuff goes all the way back to the 70s.
So What If ran for 3 seasons. It ended last year, and it is an exploration of various what if scenarios within the MCU. So the idea is I'll take the first episode, for example.
Okay.
The first episode is what if Peggy Carter received the super soldier serum instead of Steve Rogers? And then the episode is an exploration of what that story might be. And the entire series is exploration of moments like that throughout the MCU.
Sure. So this would be sacred or not sacred?
So this would not be part of the sacred timeline. Each one of these episodes is an exploration of a different universe within the Marvel multiverse.
So for the average fan, would you say this is worth their time or not?
If you are a big fan of the MCU, I think there is some value to watching this show because, whenever you're watching these things, you think to yourself, well, what if this happened? Or what if... So it's fun to see different ideas, different scenarios play out. I know What If is not for everyone. It is more comedic in tone than the rest of the Marvel universe. It's a cartoon after all.
Sure.
The animation style can be off-putting for some people. I've grown to like it, but I know it's not for everyone. If you are a Marvel Cinematic Universe super fan, you will probably get some enjoyment out of some of the episodes of this show. Ultimately, it's not required. I don't think any of the things in that show are ever going to really play into any of the movies or live action TV shows. It's just a fun exploration of alternate timelines.
All right, so maybe if you're on a flight and you have something you can't figure out what to watch, put a couple of these on your device and it's a fun escape for a little while.
And to clear up any confusion, the super soldier Peggy Carter we see in Multiverse of Madness is not the same one as What If. That was a big debate when that happened.
Okay. Boy, we're just going to get all over the place on this one, aren't we? So next up, we've got a little series that I never even saw. And as a matter of fact, I had forgotten to put it on the list originally. It's a little show that was on Disney Plus from 2022 to 2023. I Am Groot. What was that all about?
It was a series of shorts that used the CGI technology they developed to make Baby Groot for Guardians of the Galaxy 2. And that's about all it is. It's for me, it feels like I'm watching a tech demo.
Yeah.
Where they're like, here's what we can do with our photorealistic animation technology. And then it's putting Baby Groot in various, cute scenarios.
So really not worth anybody's time for the most part.
Yeah, it's not all. Some people think it's hilarious.
Little kids might like it.
Yeah, I will say, I think it's a great show for little kids.
All right. And clearly not sacred, not part of the sacred timeline.
Well, there was some debate about it.
Oh.
Because there's nothing in it that directly contradicts anything. So theoretically, it could be canon. It could be part of the sacred timeline. But I think James Gunn had said that it's not part of the sacred timeline.
All right. Fair enough. Next up, we have a series that we're going to break a rule a little bit with here and go beyond the Disney Plus years back in time to a series that had been in the 90s called X-Men. They did a continuation of it on Disney Plus in 2024 called X-Men 97. What do we know about this show?
So I never watched the original X-Men show. It was before my time, and I haven't seen the new season that they made for Disney Plus. But much like when we discuss Clone Wars here in a bit, this show was very, very popular when it ran in the 90s. And Disney realized that, oh, this was a very popular show. Maybe we should bring it back. So they started, and I think they're making more seasons of it as well.
They are.
It's essentially an animated adaptation of the X-Men comics. From what I understand, it's really good. It has a lot of really faithful adaptations. The new season with, updated animation looks really, really good. Obviously, it is not part of the Sacred Timeline as it came out before the MCU started.
Right. The original series ran from 1992 to 1997. And I did see a few of the original episodes, and I will say they were rather faithful to the comics. And I think as soon as Disney had a chance to use the X-Men, they wanted to get this show into production immediately. It has been pretty highly reviewed. The only thing that's a little odd, and I talked about it during one of my news stories during the show several episodes back, the show came out, and then 1 week before the show came out, the creator of the show, who was also the creator of the original show, suddenly left the series, and nobody.
I don't think I knew about this.
Yeah, and nobody really knew why at the time. I would have to do a little more research to get more detail on it, but that may be an update to a news story to come. So I would say that it's probably worth your time if you are an X-Men fan.
Yeah, this, again, from what I understand, this is a pretty beloved show for 90s kids, for X-Men fans. So yeah, if you are a big X-Men fan, give this one a watch. But if you are just interested in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, this isn't really going to have any bearing on you. It's just a good animated series.
All right, and a new one that just came out is the next one up on our list. It's Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Came out just this year. Tell us a little bit about that.
This one has had a very interesting production history. I don't need to get into all of it here.
Sure.
But it was created as... Its initial inception was a telling of Spider-Man's early days before he met Tony Stark.
Right.
And once the show came out, it had kind of morphed into a totally alternate universe retelling of Spider-Man's origin story, but loosely inspired by the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Probably because it made it a little less messy and it didn't have to belong to the cinematic universe and hold to their rules.
Yeah, the writers and directors and people behind the show could have a little more fun, do whatever they wanted to with it. I know that the art style for the show is very hit or miss for people, but it's supposed to be super reminiscent of early Spider-Man comics, which it is.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like it's very much a comic booky show. I have not seen it. It's not part of the Sacred Timeline, obviously. I think a lot of people like it.
Yeah, it's reviewed fairly well, but for me, if it's not part of the timeline, I try not to get, because I've got a lot of habits and I've got a lot of things and a lot of stuff that I watch, and so I have to kind of limit myself. So I haven't seen this one yet. It's reviewed well, but not part of the timeline, so I probably won't watch it.
For me, the difference with something like this and a what if is kind of, it's intrinsically tied to the MCU.
Oh, sure, because it's inspired by things from.
Right. It is like direct what if scenarios based on the movies and TV shows. This is something that is kind of inspired by the MCU, but is ultimately its own thing.
Sure. The next up on our list is really, I believe, the only animated Marvel show that is truly part of the Sacred Timeline, and it just came out. It's called Eyes of Wakanda. What do we know about this one?
I unfortunately have not watched this one yet. It is a 4-episode miniseries.
So not a big commitment.
Yeah, not a big commitment. I'm pretty sure all the episodes are like 22 minutes, like a half hour, and it is a look at different missions the Wakandans went on throughout history.
Yeah, to obtain and protect vibranium, I believe.
Right. So like the first episode, I want to say takes place in the days of like the ancient Greeks. Like I want to say it involves like Athens or Troy or something. I'm kind of speaking out of nowhere here because I haven't seen it.
No, I've looked into it somewhat, and it is given the stamp of approval, and it's actually being supervised by Ryan Coogler, the guy who made the Black Panther films, and he's got a big hand in the production of this. I guess the idea was for him, the way to explore this huge, rich history of the Wakandans without putting it into the huge budget that it would have to be to produce these things for the big screen. You know, it's hard to go back in time and recreate a universe, you know, out of real stuff for a big screen film, and it's a lot easier and a lot cheaper to do with animation. But apparently these stories are supposed to be vast and all encompassing and really cool. So if you are a fan of the Black Panther series and you really want to get down to the nitty gritty of the Wakandans and learn about their history, this is 100% for you. And I'm not sure which pieces of this will have any influence on things that happen in the MCU in their future, but I assume that it's all going to tie to some little bits and pieces from the Black Panther films.
If nothing else, if you're just an MCU completionist like I am, it's part of the sacred timeline. So you would want to see this like you would want to see anything else.
Yeah, and it's not a huge commitment. It's 4 episodes, definitely, you know, a plane flight type of situation. I intend on watching it. When we take off and fly for our cruise, I'm going to put this on my device.
And as a little side note, this was the first series for Phase 6 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because I think it came out just a couple of weeks after First Steps.
It did. So this is definitely, it's going to kickstart Phase 6 in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Then the final one on our Marvel list is one that I'm ridiculously excited about because I think it's just going to be a boatload of fun, and it's called Marvel Zombies. So what do we want to say about Marvel Zombies?
This one I think is going to be a lot of fun. I'm very excited for it. It comes out in 2 days, actually. From when we are recording this, it comes out in 2 days.
Right. So by the time the show is released, so will this show.
So Marvel Zombies is going to be a continuation of an episode from season 1 of What If.
Tying back to our very first show we talked about here.
Yeah. If you plan on watching Marvel Zombies, I suggest watching the Zombies episode from What If. And this show is also going to be full TVMA.
All right, 100%. They're going to go full Daredevil on us.
Yeah, it's going to be blood, guts, the whole thing.
Not for the kiddos.
Yeah, not for kids. So this is going to be an animated adaptation of the Marvel Zombies comics that have happened in the past. This is not going to be a 1-for-1. This is going to be very MCU-ified, but still, it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun.
And it's going to have voice actors from the big screen involved.
Yeah, they're going to be reprising their roles just like in What If, where a lot of the big screen actors reprise their roles.
I think a big chunk of the Thunderbolts team is going to be involved in this film.
Well, yeah. If you notice, the main cast for Marvel Zombies is mostly the newer people to the MCU, because the Marvel Zombies episode proper, you see what happens to a lot of the OG cast members.
That may or may not be zombies in this. And so the Thunderbolts team is going to have to try to contain them and try to keep all the zombies at bay. And it's just in time for Halloween. So this is an absolute no-brainer for me to watch. And I would highly suggest this, even though it's not part of the sacred timeline. I think that it is going to be a lot of fun. All right, so next up, we're going to tackle, quite frankly, which is the longest list, because there weren't as many Marvel shows on Disney Plus in the animated style as there are Star Wars shows. And there is a huge, rich history of Star Wars animated shows that we need to get to here. So what we need to address is basically, are these shows canon or not? What does that mean to us?
So for Star Wars, when we're talking about canon, we mean stuff that Lucasfilm has said, this is relevant, this is what has happened in the same universe that the Skywalker saga is in. If it has a stamp of not canon or legends, that means it is not officially part of the Skywalker Saga series.
All right. So first up will be one of the times we're going to break the rules and go back just a little bit. And the only reason I want to mention this is this original Star Wars Clone Wars television show from Cartoon Network between 2003 and 2005 were like little mini episodes. And actually they had some web content, and they were one of the first shows that did television and internet at the same time. But it's all about this very stylized animation style of Star Wars stories, very anime, very over the top. But this show walked so everybody else could run. What do we want to say? What do you want to say about the Clone Wars show? I loved it when it originally came out, and I remember you as a little kid, you really enjoyed it too.
Yeah, I very much enjoyed the Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars. I'm also just a big fan of his animation style. I've seen some other projects of his that I think are a lot of fun. I think for the original Clone Wars animated show by him, it was our first ever look at what the Clone Wars could have looked like.
Sure.
And it also gave us an introduction to many characters who would become much more relevant in the modern day Clone Wars and film series in general, like Asajj Ventress, General Grievous.
Right.
So there is some historical significance with it, despite the fact that it is now currently considered not canon.
Correct. And I think it's just a really neat thing. They're not super long. I just wanted to put it on here because it is on Disney Plus. People are going to see it and maybe get confused between this Clone Wars and the Clone Wars. But I think it is a lot of fun. And if you are into anime style or the Tartakovsky style shows, you'll definitely enjoy this. Next up on our list is a bit of an oddball for me. It's Star Wars Resistance. It was on from 2018 to 2020, and it was on the Disney Channel and Disney XD. And it's canon. It's considered canon. I don't remember watching too much of it. You watched some of it. Oh, you didn't.
I think I saw the first episode of it because I wanted to give it a shot.
Right.
And I determined pretty quickly that it just wasn't going to be for me.
Yeah, this was on the heels of The Force Awakens. So they have BB-8 in it to kind of help bring it together. It was just sort of it's canon, and it tells stories during, I believe, the time.
It's the lead up to The Force Awakens.
Correct.
And then it bridges, because if you know anything about the Star Wars timeline, Force Awakens and Last Jedi happen immediately after one another.
Right.
So then the first season of Resistance leads up to The Force Awakens, and then the second season of Resistance bridges the gap between Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker.
Okay. Well, this show, I've got to say that what I did see a little bit of it, not a ton. I saw, like you, I believe, the first episode and realized it was kind of comedic in tone and just rather silly. And it doesn't really, although it is canon and it's part of the universe, it doesn't tell anything important.
No, I think the episodes that directly tie into the movies do have some kind of connection, do have some kind of lead into it. But to me, this was different from Clone Wars or Rebels, where yes, it starts out with a more immature, more childlike nature before becoming mature later on. This show kind of maintained, from what I understand, because I have not seen all of it, that more child-friendly tone throughout it. So it just didn't click with me.
Yeah.
I was too old to be watching it. I wasn't the target audience.
Yeah, and I think in general, most people who are older probably won't get any entertainment value out of this. All right, so next up is another one, not unlike the Tartakovsky series of Clone Wars. It's called Star Wars Visions. It's been on Disney Plus since 2021. It's not canon, but it's definitely very interesting.
Yeah, it's very loosely inspired by the Star Wars universe, and every episode I think is done by like a different animation studio. They're all in very different styles.
Correct.
But I think majority it's very influenced by Eastern animation.
Yeah.
So a lot of the episodes kind of have more of an anime influence to them. I think they just recently announced a new season is coming out of
Yep,
Visions.
that's correct.
The idea behind Star Wars Visions is to give, these independent animation studios a chance to play around with the Star Wars sandbox and just make something really fun and creative. It really has no bearing on the mainline Star Wars series, but if you want to see essentially cool little short films, watch Star Wars Visions. I
Yeah.
haven't seen any of them because I'm a canon head, and
So am I.
so I just never gave it a shot. But I had some friends in college who watched it, and they enjoyed it quite a bit.
It's very artsy.
Yeah, it's very well. Like I said, it's short films that have a very unique animation style and are loosely inspired by Star Wars,
but not necessary to enjoy the Star Wars universe.
No.
All right, next up is one we're going to talk about really quickly because this is clearly aimed at little kids. It is the Star Wars Young Jedi Adventures, started in 2023 and it is still ongoing. It's canon-ish. It has Yoda, and he leads this troop of little Jedi babies, essentially, through little goofy adventures. Has nothing important to say, but it is clearly aimed at little kids.
Yeah, I mean, it's your typical Disney Junior. It's on Disney Junior, right?
It is.
Like that's where it airs.
Well, Disney Junior television on the channel that still exists, but yes, it's on Disney Plus too.
So yeah, it's your very typical show that is aimed at younger kids.
Yeah.
But if you have a little kid who likes Star Wars, I'm sure they will enjoy it. And confusingly enough for me, it's set in the High Republic era.
Yeah.
So like the same era that the live action show The Acolyte is set in. So it's very odd that they chose this completely unexplored period of Star Wars history and said, let's make a show for little guys that loosely explores this time period and is maybe canon.
Right. I mean, so not for adults. Probably the people listening to the show are not going to want to watch it 100%. So let's move on to the next one. And this is a series that I really enjoy. It is the Star Wars Tales series. There are different versions of this. It started in 2022. These are all considered canon. There's been 3 different seasons, I guess you would say. They've done Star Wars Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Empire, and most recently, Tales of the Underworld. I thought this was a really cool series. What do you think about it?
Yeah, it is really neat. Each season is split into 2 story arcs, and each story arc explores a different character from the Star Wars universe. So, for example, the first season, Tales of the Jedi, is split into an Ahsoka story arc and a Count Dooku story arc, where you get a little background on the character, maybe some things they've been up to that we didn't get to see in the story proper. These shows are essentially a character study on someone, where you get a little bit on them that you wouldn't get in the main series proper.
Yeah, you get to learn where Ahsoka came from, how she got where she was, how she became part of the Jedi Order, what happened to Count Dooku. You get to see that too.
How he became a Sith Lord.
Yeah, you get to see his quote unquote downfall from the Jedi Order. And I've got to tell you what, these really flesh out the stories for these characters. So if you are into any of the characters listed on these episodes, it is definitely for you.
And it's in the style of the Clone Wars, like they use the same animation style.
Well, they're written by Dave Filoni, most of them.
Right. So you have one that explores Jedi, you have one that explores Sith and Imperial characters, and then you have one that explores dubious characters and bounty hunters.
Sure.
Yeah.
And how I believe Asajj Ventress is featured in the Underworld series. So these are canon. They directly connect to the Star Wars universe. They're using characters pulled directly from the films and the television shows, and they just basically enhance the story. So when you watch these other characters on the big screen or on their television shows, you get to understand a little more about where they're coming from and how they got where they are. I think these things are a lot of fun, and I think they really enhance my viewing of the other Star Wars properties, 100%.
Yeah, they add context to characters that maybe may have not had some of that context previously, like a Cad Bane or
Hmm.
the Night Sister from the Ahsoka series.
Right. So, I mean, I think I would definitely recommend this for people who are looking to fill out their canon Star Wars storyline. Next up is one that I really enjoyed. It was Star Wars Rebels. It ran from 2014 to 2018, and it is canon. It followed basically this group of rebels who are part of the early days of the Rebel Alliance and brings in characters from the old Clone Wars television show, not the Tartakovsky one. It's the big dog we're getting ready to talk about, the main guy, Star Wars, the Clone Wars. But this was a spin-off of that and continued some of the characters' stories, but basically focused on this group of rebels and all the missions they ran during the early days of the rebellion.
Yeah, I think part of the idea was, they had just wrapped up for the time being,
Right.
they had just wrapped up a show exploring the Clone Wars and taking place in the prequel era. And with Disney sort of refocusing on the original trilogy and the upcoming sequel trilogy, they wanted an animated show that would sort of tie into that era as well. So they came up with Star Wars Rebels, which leads up to A New Hope, essentially.
Yes.
So it was like their original trilogy answer to an animated series.
Yeah, and it really it helps tie it bridges the gap between the Clone Wars era and the Star Wars era proper that most people know about.
Rebels was had a very tough act to follow because the Clone Wars was so beloved,
Mhm.
and then it was unceremoniously canceled, and
We're going to get to that.
a lot of people were upset about it. So they came out with Rebels, and a lot of people were automatically turned off to it because they felt like they killed the Clone Wars to make this.
Which is not true.
And Rebels, of course, starts out with a more upbeat, child-friendly tone, much like the Clone Wars did, because they wanted their audience to grow up with the show. So people that had grown up with Clone Wars were, adults or young adults, late teenagers, whatever.
Like yourself.
Yeah, so they weren't necessarily interested in going back to the simpler stories like they had at the start of the Clone Wars.
And kind of start all over again.
Yeah, with Rebels. But since its lukewarm reception, Rebels has gained a lot of respect. It's gained a lot more fans as time has gone by. And Star Wars proper has really soaked up and taken in a lot of these characters as they have started to show up in live action projects. Like Ahsoka is essentially Rebels season 5.
Yeah, it is. I think it is. I wouldn't say essential, but I think it will really enhance your viewing of the television series Ahsoka if you at least watch some of Rebels, maybe the later seasons. But I really love the show. I think for me, you had touched on the topic of how this show and the show we're getting ready to talk about, which is the big dog hanging in the corner, Star Wars, the Clone Wars, it starts with a certain age group in mind. Both shows did. But I had the advantage of watching the Clone Wars with you, and then I watched Rebels with Parker.
Right.
So I had the advantage of, so he's a Rebels kid, you're a Clone Wars kid.
Mm-hmm.
And both of you grew up with each of the shows and were very excited to see how they ended.
Right.
And I think that for me, that was where the fun came in for me. And I think that's why I have a soft spot for both of these shows, because I watched them through your eyes and through your brother's eyes as I start to get all sappy and stuff. But I would definitely recommend Star Wars Rebels, especially if you are a fan of the inner workings of the rebellion and how things happen, how they got their hands on information and how the system works. So I would definitely recommend it. Okay, the next one up, I believe, is maybe one of your favorites.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
So this is Star Wars: The Bad Batch. So this started on Disney Plus as a spin-off of Star Wars: The Clone Wars, which we will continue to tease you with for a couple more minutes.
It was based on it came from an episode or two of Clone
a
Wars.
story arc in the last season
Yes.
of the final season of the Clone Wars, about this rogue group of clone troopers that they had sort of special abilities, I guess you would say.
Well, at the time they were considered defects.
Right.
And since they were, so that means that they were a bad batch because the clones were produced, and this was a bad batch of clones.
Right. So Clone Force 99 was treated as their like black ops group that would do the dirty stuff that none of the other like sparkling shiny clone troopers wanted to do.
They're the bad cops.
Right. So like they thought more independently, and thus whenever Order 66 happened, the Bad Batch didn't go through with that and continued to do their own thing. So the Bad Batch TV show is exploring what they do after, Revenge of the Sith and the exploits and missions they go on. Have you ever wondered what happened to the clone troopers after Order 66? Why they were replaced with stormtroopers? The Bad Batch explores some of that. And my feelings towards it are a little up and down. I think they have some fantastic stories in there, and then they have some real filler video game style like fetch quests. So it's hit or miss in quality, but there is some pretty cool and interesting stuff in there. And being a sort of continuation and spinoff of the Clone Wars, I was just kind of interested.
Okay.
And it starts darker because it's assuming the people that are watching it are coming from like a more adult place.
Well, right after Revenge of the Sith, when all the Jedis get killed.
Yeah, so it's a little more serious of a show, and that allows them to tell more complex and mature stories right off the bat. So it's, like I said, it's a very interesting show for a variety of reasons. And of course, it's canon. So I think if you enjoy Clone Wars, and if you like what you see of them in the final, the final season of the Clone Wars, give it a shot. You may like it, you may not. I don't think we're ever going to see those characters again.
No, I don't think we are. So now we're going to get to the big dog in the corner, Star Wars: The Clone Wars. It originally ran from 2008 to 2013 on Cartoon Network. Then it had a season in 2014 on Netflix, and then Disney Plus finished the show out in 2020. This show is canon, and quite frankly, all of the discussions we've been having about this Star Wars universe are all sort of branches from this tree. They all, in one way or another, either loosely or directly connect to this show. This show is probably, if I were going to pick one show for somebody to watch that's animated in Star Wars for them to see, it would be this show.
I mean, the thing that is so special about this show is, in the prequels, they talk about the Clone Wars. Even in the original trilogy, they briefly mention the Clone Wars. It was this huge, significant period of galactic history within Star Wars, and you never see it anywhere except for this animated show that explores what happened during the Clone Wars.
You see a snippet of the beginning of it in Attack of the Clones, and you see a snippet of the end of it in Revenge of the Sith, but this war lasted several years, and this show shows it to us.
If you want to know why people my age like the prequel trilogy, this show is why, because it gives you so much, it makes all of the characters in the prequels so much more deep, so much more complex. It adds so much more context to everything that happens in the prequels. It actively makes the prequels better, which is...
Yeah, it does.
Which is a really fascinating thing.
That you needed this animated show to make these big screen, big budget films seem even more important and better in quality.
And Clone Wars was also very unique in something we've mentioned multiple times at this point, is that it grew up with its audience.
Yeah.
If you were familiar with Harry Potter, that does the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
For me, who was not a Harry Potter kid, Clone Wars was my first experience with watching something that grows up with its audience, and I loved that. It works so well. I started watching the Clone Wars when it first came out, when I was 8, when it came out as a movie.
Right. It came out as a movie first, because I think at that time period, they thought that movies were still the way to go to get people to watch a television show, which was interesting.
Right. So I started watching it when I was 8. And then, I grew up with it, and the show ended for the first time when I was 13. So I matured with the show, and it matured with me. So if you are watching the Clone Wars, just understand that the early seasons, there's some rougher stuff that doesn't quite hold up.
Yeah, I mean, but it was aimed at an 8-year-old audience, much like the original Star Wars was aimed at a 7 and 8-year-old audience.
But I mean, once you get to the end of the Clone Wars, and like the final season on Disney Plus, some of the best Star Wars stories are like ever told are in this show.
They are, and it's really interesting, and it's had a very complicated history, which we'll try to cover quickly because we've been talking forever. But the Clone Wars started on Cartoon Network, and Cartoon Network had a pretty good relationship with Lucasfilm up to this point with the Tartakovsky stuff and all the other Star Wars content they had. But this was their big show, and it ran on Cartoon Network until 2013. And what's interesting about it is it didn't get to finish its story. It just sort of stopped because that was when Disney purchased Star Wars. And at the time, I don't think Disney realized what they had in this show and how important it was to so many people, because their focus was, we've got to get Star Wars back on the big screen. We need to clean the slate. We need to get rid of everything that's on television. We need to get rid of all legacy media and just make it legacy.
Yeah, that's when Legends was created.
Yes.
And people were very upset about
Oh,
that.
yes. They took a lot of the books and cartoons.
I mean, decades worth of content, they just said, that's not canon anymore.
Yeah, and it's still, some of that still irks me quite a bit, but it is what it is.
But every now and then they bring stuff back, like Thrawn.
Yeah, they've been picking and choosing little bits and pieces since this happened. But at the time, they were like, we're going to go back to the big screen. We need to wipe the slate clean. Let's just cancel everything. And they did. And what was interesting was Dave Filoni, and this is the television show that brought Dave Filoni into the Star Wars universe.
Kind of made him the Kevin Feige of Star Wars.
Correct. I mean, so you've got the Mandalorian and Grogu, you've got the Ahsoka series, they got the Kenobi series. Everything that's been going on at least the small screen for sure has been because of Dave Filoni. So he was able to strike a deal, and I think Disney realized that they had made a mistake the year after they canceled this show and said, fine, Dave, you can, because they had already had the next season was pretty much in the can writing-wise, and they had already started the rough draft of the animations. So they decided, okay, we will let you finish your show, but it's not going to be on Disney. They took it to Netflix. And so Netflix ran what was called Star Wars, The Clone Wars, The Lost Missions. So it was the bits and pieces that they had created for various episodes. So they didn't do a full season, but they took what they had and they did like a small sort of mini-series season and sort of quote unquote wrapped up the show. But we'll get to that right now. They didn't wrap up the show on Netflix. And after the run on Netflix, it was the #1 show on Netflix for several months. And Disney was like, dang it, what have we done? Because, what happened in between 2014 and 2020 is the sequel trilogy came out. And the first one was amazing. Everybody loved it. The second one was probably the most controversial Star Wars film ever. And then the third one was a confusing mess because they had to fix what happened in the second film. And essentially, Disney really created a lot of bad blood between them and Star Wars fans.
They wanted an easy win, and they needed new content for their brand new streaming service.
Yep.
So what they did was, well, why don't we resurrect that one show that everyone really, really, really liked and give it its final season? And so they resurrected Star Wars The Clone Wars and gave it its 7th and final season in 2020. And I believe the last episode for The Clone Wars dropped on Star Wars Day in 2020.
It did. And I've got to tell you, it is some of the best Star Wars animated content they've ever done. that final season.
And I mean, it was kind of a perfect time to release it too, because the pandemic had just started. So everyone was sitting around with nothing to do. And then they bring back one of the most beloved Star Wars shows of all time for one final season. So all eyes were on it. It was a really fun event if you were there for it.
Yeah, I've got to say that as we wrap this up, if you have one show for the Star Wars universe to watch, animated style, it is the Clone Wars series. All of the seasons, even the Netflix season, are available on Disney Plus. And if you're going to watch Marvel, you're going to pick one show for Marvel, what would you pick?
I would probably say What If.
Yeah.
I would probably say What If.
Even though it's not part of the sacred timeline, it's just so much fun.
Yeah, if you can get over some of the comedy at times, it's just fun.
That's what it's for. And you can finish it up by watching Marvel Zombies when it comes out. All right, Zach, thanks for joining us for what turned into probably the longest family chat in the history of Mickey, Marvel, and more.
Yeah. Keep it tight. Yep.
Keep it tight. Yeah. If we're ever left to our own devices, we'll just sit here and talk for days and days and days.
We had a lot to discuss.
We did. So we'll see you next time.
I can do this all day.
Thanks so much for joining us for another jam-packed episode of Mickey, Marvel, and More. And a big thank you to fan favorite Zack for hanging out with me in the family chat and breaking down all the info on Star Wars and Marvel animated content. You know, with all of this talk of alternate universes and timelines, I am sure that out there's a timeline somewhere where Zack and I are still talking. Also, a big thank you to our great listeners who always write in with questions and ideas, just like the one that led to this episode's family chat idea. If you have any questions or ideas, drop us a comment on one of our socials or to our email address, Mickey, Marvel, and More, all one word, @gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. And if we read your comment, question, or idea on the show, you will become an official friend of the show, with all of the non-existent rights and privileges that come along with that. All of this info can be found down in our show notes, along with links to all the stories we talked about. Also, you can find all of the various locations where you can find and subscribe to our little mom and pop podcast. Our fans are the greatest. As always, if you enjoyed this episode, my name is Mark, and this has been Mickey, Marvel, and More. If you didn't, my name is Frank, and this has been Frank on Franks, where we talk all about hot dogs and hot dog culture. Join us next week for the groundbreaking story of the history of mechanically separated meat. And remember, all hot dogs are wieners, but not all wieners are winners. Oh boy, I'll have that with a side of relish. Okay, I've got to stop myself. And you know, I didn't even get to use my link to links joke. We'll see you next time.